right, let's finish chapter 14. Corrie had just gotten out of the truck and looked up the path. She stood for a moment and then slowly walked up the path towards the familiar brick building. As she approached the house, she remembered the last time she and Willem had both been free together. It had been nearly a year ago at the Bayet when he was holding his weekly prayer meeting just as the Gestapo burst into the house. Corrie knocked loudly on the rest home door. Within minutes, Willem, Tyne, and the children excitedly surrounded Corrie, smothering her with hugs and kisses. They peppered her with questions, and as she told them about how Betsy had died in Ravensbrück, tears welled from their eyes. Then Tyne reported how they had not heard anything from Kik since he had been taken to Germany. But the sadness was tempered by some good news. Willem told how all the people who had been hiding in the Bayet, except Mary, had managed to avoid capture by the Nazis, and the underground network in Arnhem was still working hard hiding people from the Germans. Corrie stayed the next week with Willem and his family, but by the second day with them she realized Willem was ill. He did not like to talk about it, but Tyne told Corrie that Willem had become sick with tuberculosis in jail and hadn't got any better after his release. Willem, though, carried on as if nothing had happened, working in the rest home, writing a book about the Old Testament. He also spent a lot of time figuring out how to get Corrie back to the Bayet. He knew that she wouldn't feel completely at home until she was there. At breakfast one day in late January, Willem announced that everything was set for Corrie to go back to the Bayet. No trains were running, but a car would pick her up at 11 o'clock in the morning and take her there. Sure enough, at exactly 11 o'clock a.m., a black limousine pulled up in front of the rest home. The family waved goodbye as Corrie stepped into the limousine for the most luxurious drive of her life. She was curious how Willem had arranged such a wonderful ride, but she knew better than to ask. Don't ask questions was a lesson Corrie hadn't forgotten from her involvement in the underground. The car zoomed towards Arnhem. No other vehicles were on the road, which gave the trip an eerie feeling. Eerie, vocabulary word, mysterious, strange. So eerie feeling. But with no traffic, in no time the limousine was turning at the corner past St. Bavo's Church into Bartelsdorpstraat. It rolled along the street and pulled to a halt in front of the clock shop. Corrie climbed out, and the car sped away. As it disappeared from view at the end of Bartelsdorpstraat, she took a deep breath. Let me spell that, Bartelsdorpstraat. 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 She had imagined this moment so many times, though always with Betsy standing beside her. Before Corrie could open the door to the clock shop, it swung open. Nolly rushed out. She enveloped Corrie with her arms. The two sisters hugged and clung to each other with tears of joy running down their cheeks. Finally, arm in arm, they walked into the Bayet. Waiting inside were Nolly's three daughters, who eagerly welcomed Tante Corrie home. The five of them walked together through the Bayet. First, they went into Corrie's bedroom. The angel's den was still hidden behind the linen closet and bookcase. The Gestapo had never managed to discover the entrance to it. Next, they went into Tante John's old bedroom. The chair in which their mother had sat and looked out over Bartelsdorpstraat so many years before still sat by the window. The chair. In the kitchen, Betsy's favorite recipe book was still propped up beside the stove, and in the clock shop, Caspar ten Boom's eyeglass lay on his workbench right where he had left it. All the things were still there in the Bayet, but the people who made it home were not. As Corrie walked through the house, both happiness and sadness mingled inside her. Mingled, vocabulary word, mixed together. Corrie was happy to be free, happy to be back in Arnhem, in the Bayet, but sad because Betsy and her father were not there and would never be there again. Together, Nolly, Corrie, and the girls cleaned the house until it was spotless. But somehow, after all the dreams and longing to be back at the Bayet, it didn't feel like home to Corrie anymore. Even after she resumed her watchmaking career, she would sit down to replace the mainspring in a watch and not be able to concentrate on the task. All the time she felt as though she should be somewhere else, doing something else. Despite what she was feeling, throughout the spring of 1945, Corrie tried hard to pick up and go on with her life as it had been before the Gestapo raid. But her attempt to get back to normal was made even more difficult by the fact that northern Holland was still under German occupation. Excuse me. Hitler had pulled all his occupying troops out of Norway, Denmark, Belgium, and France, but for whatever reason, he was unwilling to loosen his grip on northern Holland. This left the citizens of Arnhem and other northern towns in a terrible situation. They had no food, no fuel, and no transportation. Dutch citizens were dying from starvation and the cold, right in their own homes, while in many other parts of Europe, people were celebrating their liberation from German occupation. Spring dragged on, and Corrie watched as so many people she knew became desperate to survive, almost as desperate as the prisoners she and Betsy had been with in Voot and Ravensbrück concentration camps. As she saw what was happening to them, she remembered Betsy's words. We must tell the people. There is no pit so deep that God's love is not deeper. As she recalled those words, Corrie knew what was missing from her life. She wasn't supposed to be in the clock shop repairing watches. God wanted her out telling these desperate people about his love for them. Within days, Corrie had begun speaking in homes and at church gatherings. It was difficult for her to relive the pain she had been through, but the stories she told about herself and Betsy gave many people courage to go on. And because of that, despite her emotional pain, Corrie knew she could not stop speaking about her experience. Then, on May 1st, 1945, news quickly buzzed through Holland that Adolf Hitler was dead. The official word was that he had died fighting the enemy. The world would later learn he had committed suicide in a bunker in Berlin. All Holland held its breath. Surely it was only a matter of days now before the Nazis surrendered and gave up Holland. And it was. On Tuesday, May 8th, 1945, Canadian tanks rolled into Arnhem. The bells of St. Bob's Church rang out, and everyone crowded into the streets. Corrie had one thing to do before she joined the others in the street. She took her father's portrait off the wall in the parlor, carried it down to the clock shop. Lovingly, she set it in the front window of the shop. Then she climbed the stairs again and brought down the old family Bible that he had read from every morning and evening. She opened it at Psalm 91 and laid it in the window. Then she took orange, the Dutch royal color, orange ribbons, and draped them across Casper ten Boom's portrait. Now, Corrie said to herself, he too is a part of this great day. With that, she slipped out the side door of the Bayeux and disappeared into the throng, vocabulary word, a large number of people assembled. She disappeared into the throng of celebrating Dutch people, free Dutch people, who were finally out from under the clutches of Nazi Germany, clutches grasping or firmly seizing hands.